Trump's meltdown over the funding for his border wall continues, and his latest threats include just shutting down the US-Mexico border if he doesn't get exactly what he wants, which of course is $5 billion in the spending bill for the border wall. Now, I have to give credit to Democrats who have refused to concede to Trump, and it appears to be paying off for them. At least that's what the polls indicate. But before I get to the polls, I'm going to give you Trump's threat, which he issued, of course, via Twitter. He said, "We will be forced to close the southern border entirely if the obstructionist Democrats do not give us the money to finish the wall and also change the ridiculous immigration laws that our country is saddled with. Hard to believe there was a Congress and president who would approve." So that's what he has to say. But can he unilaterally shut down the border wall? And if he can, what kind of consequences would that lead to? Well, luckily, CBS News talked about this, and one of their experts, White House experts, gave us some details about what this means for, I don't know, things like our economy. Take a look.
In theory, the president can use federal law with wide discretion to take lots of different enforcement actions at the border. Shutting down the entire border, which is something the president has talked about, would be legally questionable and logistically challenging, to put it mildly. There have been times in American history, most notably and most memorably after 9/11, where certain parts of the US border were shut down for legitimate fears of terrorism and in-migration in those very, very tense days right after 9/11. All sorts of different security postures were taken because the country didn't know what was coming next. So, in theory, the president does have the power to do this. Carrying it out across the entire US-Mexico border, as I said, would not only be a great logistical challenge, it would impose immediate and very noticeable economic pains on both countries. There's a tremendous amount of trade.
So let's talk a little bit more about the economic impact if this were to happen. And I don't put it past Trump, to be clear. I think that he would do something like this. But here's what the consequence would be. Keep in mind that about $558 billion in goods flowed across the border in both directions last year. Also, the US exported $243.3 billion in goods across the border, along with $58 billion in services. So this is serious, but I don't think that this is something that Trump has studied or really thinks about. And it would, again, have huge consequences for our economy, and it would be a logistical nightmare.
So two more facts. So trade across the border is, according to some experts, about $1 billion a day. So if you look at those numbers, it actually comes out to more than that. But this is the part I did not know and did not expect. It's a big number. It turns out nearly 500,000 people enter the US each day from the border.
Legally.
Legally, yeah. And so that's just, people going back and forth, Americans coming back into the country, Mexicans coming in legally on visits, et cetera, business, and trade, a ton of trade, obviously. 500,000 people every day. If you block the border entirely, it's not gonna work. That's crazy. I mean, the mess that would create would be epic, but here's a president who never thinks through any consequences. So maybe he does it for half a day and then everybody's like, "You idiot, what are you doing?" And then chaos ensues and then he goes, "Yeah, the Democrats made me do it. I knew it was a bad idea." So we'll see.
That seems to be very much his speed in terms of blaming the Democrats. But the thing that gets me the most in terms of the loss, in addition to that, is just the unemployment right now of federal government workers. And having worked for the federal government for about 5 years and having a lot of friends still there, and speaking to them, and just the difficulty that they're going through, because some of them still live paycheck to paycheck, or they have student loans, and so they're taking out loans from family members if they have them, and then finding out what the Coast Guard, 42,000 employees, they're not going to get paid because of their pay structure until sometime in mid-January, depending on when we can start things back up. It's just there's so much loss here, and it all seems to be to feed his ego.
Right. I mean, I don't know. Trump said he talked to those federal workers, and they're all elated about what's going on.
Yeah.
They're happy because they really want that border wall, except they don't. They're all very upset. Everything that you just mentioned is what's being, relayed in the press. There was recently a Twitter campaign where federal workers were sharing what their financial situation is now that the government's been shut down for 7 days in a row.
Yes.
Yeah, but this is a guy who doesn't think through any consequences. So a recent example is when he went and talked to the troops and said, I got you a 10% pay raise. He didn't think through for 1 second that of course people would check. They've checked everything you've said, and they would realize that it's nowhere near 10% and you didn't get it for them. So not only was it a brazen and weird and outrageous lie, but just think about that for a second. He doesn't think through anything. Like even if you wanted to lie and you thought, you would probably think through, am I gonna get away with it? If you're gonna tell a lie to your girlfriend or to your boss, you think, well, is there any way they can catch me, right? Trump doesn't even think about that. He just tells unreal lies that are immediately gonna be found out because he has no ability. People keep underestimating how incredibly stupid he is. What kind of a person doesn't think through, oh, I'm the president of the United States, I'm gonna tell an outrageous lie here. Hey, won't they be able to check this 1 second later? He doesn't think that through. You think he knows what's gonna happen if we shut down the border completely? Of course he hasn't thought it through. He's a moron of epic proportions.
He's never really had to think it through, though.
Exactly.
I mean, look at how far he's gotten and how often his base lets him off the hook for the very same things that they would really aggressively go after a Democrat for instance. Like, they support him no matter what. I think that eventually all of this stuff is gonna catch up to him. Maybe not with his base, but all of the potentially criminal stuff that he's implicated in will catch up to him. But he's gotten away with this kind of nonsense without doing his homework or any research his entire life. He's never had to work for anything.
Nope, and also no lack of accountability. He doesn't have to answer to anyone. He's never really had to. He just ignores it and goes and gets someone else to do it for him, or goes and gets another wife, whatever it is. But this man doesn't know what accountability is. He doesn't know what telling the truth is. And it really seems that he also believes his lies, which is strange.
Yeah, he made up a whole conversation about how advisors came in and told him, let's do a 2% raise for the military. He's like, no, 3%, 4%, no, I want a 10%. Everything's complete fiction. It's the Department of Labor sets the number. Trump had absolutely nothing to do with it. That conversation never happened. It wasn't 10, it was 2.6. He's just, and it goes towards not only the stupidity, but you guys are right, the entitlement. But Trump, your dad's not around anymore. So he gave you $400 million. He bailed you out of 6 bankruptcies, but he's not here. I know you think Putin is your new daddy, okay, but he can't bail you out of this. So right now, let's talk about the polling. Only 35% of Americans agree that we should shut down the government over wall funding. That's a terrible number. I know he's not good at math either. He's not good with any facts.
Yeah.
But that's a miserable number. They do not support you. The American people are totally against you.
So let's go to some of the other findings of this poll. This was a recent poll by Reuters and Ipsos. And it also found that 33% blamed Democrats in Congress for the shutdown, compared to 47% who blamed Trump. Now, again, it's good that 47%, the majority in this case, blamed Trump for this, because Trump is the one who took credit for it. Trump is the one who said it. I will gladly take credit for this government shutdown. And then as soon as the shutdown happens and he realizes that it's a politically unpopular move, he tries to blame the Democrats. And it's, honestly, his Twitter account is one tiny violin, reaction after another every time I read what he has to say, because he's always the victim, even though, again, he gladly took responsibility for shutting the government down over the sense. Again, 30% said they wanted Congress to fund the wall.
So let me be clear about 2 things. On the number of people who blame Trump, there's also another 7% that blame Republicans in Congress. So together at 54%, that's a clear majority versus just 33. But I got something slightly wrong when I stated it. I said 35% want to shut down the government over the wall. That's not true. 35% want to fund the wall, period. Like, they don't, only 25% want to shut down the government over funding the wall. So that's an even smaller number. 65% say, we don't even want to fund the wall. Forget shutting down the government. We don't want to fund the wall. Only 35% want it. So he keeps saying like, oh, the American people want it, the American people. No, only your base wants it. No one else wants it. And 2/3 of the country does not want it. 3/4 of the country does not want you to shut down the government over it. You're a liar, stop lying. I know you can't help yourself. And the rest of the media should tell everybody, no, every time he says the American people want it, they should immediately do a fact check on air saying that is not remotely true. The American people do not want to fund the wall, period.
I'm just dying to know where these 35% are, because if they're on the northern coastline, I don't even want to have the conversation. But who are these people and where are they coming from?
I'll give you one of those people, and he actually goes so far as to say we should just go ahead and fire all these government employees. We don't need them. We need smaller government. That person is Charlie Kirk. So Charlie Kirk believes that those members who federal workers in the Coast Guard aren't important. Let's fire them. Small government. He said that on Twitter. He didn't specifically mention the Coast Guard. He just said, well, small government is a good thing, so let's just get rid of all these federal employees.
Oh, yeah.
That's what Charlie Kirk thinks about the Coast Guard, about the FBI, about the Justice Department. All of these, by the way, essential federal workers who are currently working for free. I mean, it's absurd.
So when progressives said abolish ICE, they were saying, hey, that ICE is a newly created bureaucracy within the federal government, and it's a bureaucracy that targets minorities. There is ways to enforce our borders that we used to do before ICE that we should go back to because it was a better process. The Republicans lose and go, oh my God, you want to get rid of ICE? How could we have any law and order? Then conservatives like Charlie Kirk turn around and go, get rid of the Coast Guard. Screw the Justice Department. My God, if progressives said that, they would lose their minds. We knew it. You don't want to protect the country, right?
TSA. There are Border Patrol agents who are currently working for free. So those are all federal employees.
Yes, they are.
So you want to get rid of them? You want to fire them all because you want small government? It's funny because people like Charlie Kirk love big government, but they like spewing nonsense propaganda about how they like small government because they only like small government in the context of financial regulations, consumer protections, basically everything that these rich corporate goons pay him to regurgitate over and over again. But you know what? He does live like a capitalist every day. Cenk.
Well, he wouldn't be able to fly like a capitalist without TSA. So, look, these right wingers who say, my rich donors should have no taxes and they should have no regulations and they should have no minimum wage. They should be able to, crush their workers and let them die in workplace incidents. Who cares? Eventually, people would stop buying their products if they murder all their employees. Right after enough murdered employees, the market would correct itself. You know what I'm saying? Now they believe in chaos and they're anarchists, right? But they're anarchists in favor of the rich.
Yes, yeah.
But you can't build castles high enough. You can't build moats wide enough. It's just, you need order, you need rule of law, and they just don't believe in it. And neither does Trump, whether it's the Justice Department actually trying to enforce a law against him and his cronies, or it's his concept of the government overall. All these conservatives, they don't believe in a functioning democracy, in a functioning government. So that's why they don't mind destroying it. And no two Americans, which you apparently have gotten already, because 2/3 of you are